The city was alive with weekend energy, parents chatting on benches, children laughing as they chased each other across the grass. Michael stood near the edge of the playground, coffee in hand, keeping his usual quiet watch over Emily. She was his entire world, bright-eyed, curious, and the only piece of joy that had carried him through the loneliness after his wife's passing. He took a slow sip, glancing down for just a moment as his phone buzzed. When he looked up again, Emily was gone. The swing she'd been on moments earlier swayed gently in the breeze, empty. At first, he told himself she was just behind the slide, maybe playing hide-and-seek with another child. But as his eyes swept across the playground and he didn't see her familiar little figure, a strange chill crept through his chest. He called her name, his voice louder than he intended, drawing glances from other parents. No response. His heart thudded in his ears. He dropped his coffee without realizing it, the brown liquid spreading across the pavement as his legs moved before his mind could catch up. She wouldn't wander far, she knew the rules. She always stayed where he could see her. Always. But now, every second felt like an eternity. Michael's breaths grew sharp and shallow as he scanned the crowd, the park, even the street beyond. Somewhere inside him, a voice screamed that something was wrong. He didn't know it yet, but the next few minutes would change his life forever. Michael's footsteps pounded against the path as he pushed through the Saturday crowd, his eyes darting in every direction. He called Emily's name again, the edge of desperation in his voice making strangers turn their heads. Then, through the blur of faces, movement caught his eye at the far end of the park. There she was, Emily, safe, but not in his arms. She was cradled gently by a woman Michael didn't recognize. The woman's clothes were simple and worn, her hair pulled back loosely, strands falling into her face. There was something in her expression that stopped Michael from charging forward. She wasn't rushing away or trying to hide. She was kneeling, her arms protectively around Emily, speaking softly into her ear as if calming her. Michael slowed his pace but kept moving closer, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? How did she find Emily? And why was his daughter holding on to her as though she trusted her completely? Emily wasn't crying anymore. Instead, she looked up at the woman with wide, listening eyes, as if the stranger's words were wrapping around her like a warm blanket. The woman noticed Michael approaching, but she didn't flinch or retreat. In that moment, something about the scene felt unusual, not dangerous, but deeply personal. Michael could sense there was more to this than a random act of kindness. He was only a few steps away when the woman looked up at him with eyes that seemed to hold a story far heavier than the moment itself. Michael closed the distance in quick, urgent strides, his breath unsteady. Emily, he called, his voice a mixture of relief and demand. Emily turned her head and smiled faintly at him, as if nothing had been wrong, but she didn't immediately let go of the woman's hand. The stranger stood slowly, her gaze calm but tired. She was near the road, she said softly, her voice carrying no defensiveness, only quiet concern. Cars were flying by, she was scared. Michael's chest tightened again, though not from panic this time. The thought of Emily stepping anywhere near traffic made his stomach twist. He reached for his daughter, but before letting go, the woman leaned slightly closer to him. Her voice dropped to a whisper meant only for him. Never take a moment with her for granted. I lost mine last year. The words froze him in place. They weren't dramatic or embellished, just simple and raw, and they hit deeper than he expected. In the space of a single breath, Michael felt his irritation melt into something heavier, empathy, grief, and a strange connection to this stranger who had just handed him back his child. Emily slipped into his arms, unaware of the storm that had just passed between the two adults. Michael looked at the woman more closely now, noticing the way her fingers lingered in the air a second after letting go, as if she didn't want to release the small warmth she'd been holding. Michael stood there holding Emily, but his mind wasn't fully in the present moment. The stranger's whisper echoed inside him, carrying a weight that made his throat tighten. He glanced at her again, really looked this time. There was a faint tremor in her hands, the kind that comes from holding something precious you can't keep. Her eyes, though steady, held a sadness so deep it seemed endless. He thought of the way she'd crouched beside Emily, not just guarding her from danger but comforting her like a mother would. That lingering touch on Emily's shoulder, it wasn't casual. It was the kind of gesture that belongs to someone who knows what it's like to lose it forever. In his own life, Michael had been careful, maybe too careful, with his heart. Since his wife passed, he'd poured everything into providing for Emily materially, but somewhere along the way he'd started living as though every moment with her was guaranteed. He realized now it wasn't. The stranger didn't ask for gratitude, didn't ask for his story, and didn't try to share hers beyond that one whisper. But her presence cracked something open in him, an awareness that life's greatest treasures could be gone without warning, and that love had to be lived fully, not stored away for later. For the first time in years, Michael felt the sting of tears he didn't try to hide. Emily shifted in his arms, her small hands curling around his neck, and he held her tighter than he had in a long, long time. Michael cleared his throat, forcing his voice to steady. "Thank you," he said quietly, the words feeling far too small for what she had given him. Out of instinct, he reached for his wallet, but the woman shook her head before he could even open it. "I don't need anything," she said, her voice warm but firm. "Just, hug her every day. You never know which one will be the last." Her words landed in his chest with a quiet finality. She gave Emily a small smile, brushing a strand of hair from her face, then turned to walk away. Michael watched her step back into the crowd until she was swallowed by the flow of strangers, her figure fading like a memory. He looked down at Emily, who was still tucked against him, her cheek resting on his shoulder. "Daddy," she whispered, "she said my mommy's watching me too." Michael's breath caught. For a second, the noise of the park seemed to fade away, and all he could feel was the warmth of his daughter and the echo of his late wife's laughter in his heart. The ache of loss was still there, but now it was wrapped in something gentler, hope. He hugged Emily closer, closing his eyes. "She is, sweetheart," he murmured. And as they walked toward home, Michael promised himself he would never let life's busyness steal moments like this again, because he finally understood just how fragile, and how precious, those moments truly were.